Something about this case doesn't add up. A high-profile murder trial is moving forward. But the one thing that should be public, the evidence isn't. The defense is asking for it. The authorities say they have it. But no one is allowed to actually see it. And then there's something even stranger. A sudden push to rush the hearing. Before every detail can be examined, why the urgency? Why now? Because this might not just be about what happened. It might be about controlling what people are allowed to see before the truth fully comes. It started as a routine legal process. At least that's how it looked from the outside. A scheduled hearing, timeline set in advance. A case that seemed to be moving forward like any other. But very quickly, something began to feel off. The defense team representing the accused made a request that, in most cases, wouldn't even raise eyebrows. They asked for access to the full evidence, not summaries, not conclusions. The actual data, fingerprint files, forensic analysis, process documentation, the kind of material that allows a defense to do one thing: verify. Because in any serious case, especially one this high-profile, verification is everything. But instead of receiving that material, they were given summaries, condensed reports, final conclusions, without the underlying data to examine. And that's where the first crack appeared. Because a summary tells you what someone claims is true, but not how they proved it. The defense pushed back. They didn't reject the claims outright. They didn't argue emotionally. They simply asked a basic question: can we see how you got this? And that's when the situation took an unexpected turn, according to what's being discussed around the case. The answer wasn't a clear yes. Instead, delays, limitations, and a repeated reliance on summaries instead of raw evidence. Now, here's where it gets more complicated. At the same time this dispute over evidence was happening, there was growing pressure to move the case forward quickly, faster than expected, faster than comfortable. A push for a speedy process. On the surface, that might sound reasonable. After all, justice delayed is justice denied, right? But timing matters. And when you place these two facts side by side, the defense doesn't have full access to evidence. The case is being pushed forward anyway, creates tension. Not emotional tension, procedural tension. Because one side is saying we need more time to examine the facts, while the other side is saying let's move ahead now. And that contrast is what started raising questions online, not conclusions, not accusations, just questions. Why the rush if the evidence is strong? Why not allow it to be fully examined first? And then came another layer to the story, discussion around how the hearing itself might be presented publicly. There were conversations suggesting that parts of this process could become highly visible, even broadcast in ways that would shape public perception early on. And that introduces a completely different dynamic. Because when something is seen before it's fully understood, it can create a narrative that's hard to undo later. Even if new information comes out, even if details change, first impressions stick. And this is where the tone around the case started shifting. What initially looked like a straightforward legal proceeding began to feel like something more complex. Not necessarily because of what was proven, but because of what wasn't being fully shown yet. And in situations like this, perception becomes just as powerful as evidence. Online discussions started picking up. People weren't all saying the same thing, but they were noticing the same pattern. A gap between what's claimed and what's accessible. And once that gap becomes visible, it's hard to ignore. Because trust in a process doesn't come from statements alone. It comes from transparency, from allowing both sides to examine, question, and challenge. Without that, even a strong case can start to feel uncertain. And that uncertainty, that's where everything begins to shift. As the situation continued unfolding, the focus slowly began to move, not away from the case itself, but toward the behavior surrounding it. Because patterns started becoming more noticeable. The timing of certain statements, the urgency behind specific decisions. The way the narrative was being presented publicly. Individually, none of these elements seemed definitive, but together, it created a sense of momentum. And momentum, in a case like this, can be powerful, because once a story starts moving in a certain direction, it becomes harder to slow it down, harder to question it, harder to re-examine it. And that's exactly why the issue of evidence remained at the center of the conversation. The defense wasn't asking for anything extraordinary. They weren't trying to delay endlessly. They weren't introducing unrelated distractions. They were asking for access to review the methods used, to understand how conclusions were reached, to verify the chain of events being presented. And yet, according to the ongoing discussion, that access still seemed limited, which brings us back to the same core question. Why move forward before everything is fully visible? There are different ways to interpret that. Some see it as efficiency, desire to keep things moving. Others see it as pressure, a push to establish a version of events quickly. And then there are those who see it as something else entirely. Race against scrutiny. Because scrutiny takes time. It requires patience, detail, and the willingness to slow things down long enough to examine them properly. But when a process speeds up, scrutiny often gets left behind. And that's where public perception becomes critical, because people aren't just watching what's happening. They're watching how it's happening, the tone, the pacing, the decisions being made along the way. And those details can shape opinions just as much as the facts. This is also where online reactions started, becoming more intense. Some voices expressed support for moving forward quickly. Others raised concerns about transparency. But almost everyone seemed to agree on one thing. Something about the situation felt unresolved. Not necessarily wrong, but incomplete. And in high-profile cases, incomplete can be enough to keep attention locked in, because unanswered questions create curiosity. And curiosity keeps people watching, waiting, trying to connect the dots. And that's exactly where this case stands right now. Not at a clear conclusion, not at a final answer, but at a moment where multiple paths are still possible, where the outcome hasn't been fully defined yet, and where the biggest question isn't just what happened, but why everything is unfolding the way it is. Because sometimes the story isn't just in the evidence, it's in the timing, the access, and the decisions made before the full picture is visible. And until those pieces come together, the questions aren't going anywhere. If you've made it this far, then you already know. This story isn't as simple as it first looked, but now I want to hear from you. Do you think this is just a fast-moving legal process? Or does the timing raise real questions? Drop your thoughts below, because the more perspectives we see, the clearer the picture becomes. And if you're into deep dive stories like this, where every detail matters and nothing is taken at face value, hit subscribe, stay locked in, and don't miss what comes next. Because this case is still unfolding, and the next update might change everything.